good evening, everyone, and welcome to the third and the final episode of SaptaSwara, the seven notes to yogic coaching. With me is Raghu Ananthan, whom you may have either seen in the previous sessions or would have watched the recordings. Both Raghu and I introductions are available in our respective LinkedIn profiles, so I will not go through the profiles once again. We used the first episode to run through the SaptaSwara and contextualized it with leadership coaching, particularly the ICF competencies. And in the second episode, we deep dived into the foundational aspects of three of the seven notes. And those three are really about the Maitri, which is being trustworthy, being a friend, um, having compassion. The second about karma is that being proactive, valuing action, taking pride, visualizing ahead, and really asking the fundamental question in doing what the client is doing, what are we really doing? And the third we talked about was about dharma, which is really about taking action simultaneously, which enlivens self, enlivens others, enlivens the context, enlivens the planet, as it were. And how do I bring about enlivening actions that I spread all around me? So those are the three foundational. We will now, for the next 20, 30 minutes, look at going through the remaining four SaptaSwara notes. So over to you, Raghu. What are the balance four notes in the SaptaSwara, and how do they form that entire musical note?
The other four, Steve, are Nyana. We'll go into it a little bit more in detail. Nyana is generally translated as knowledge. We'll have to nuance this a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah, Nyana. Ramya, that's a very interesting term, Ramya. Yoga and Abhyasa.
Very good.
Yeah, these are the four. Yeah, so shall we go into it one by one?
Yes.
Okay. See, on Nyana, just the other day, 3-4 days back, I was part of one international panel where they were discussing ways of knowing. Right? Nyana is all about knowing. And it was very interesting because this was a panel of people who were speaking about indigenous knowledge systems. And what we discovered was that while the UN says there are only 460 million people who are indigenous, if you remove, I think only 460 million people are European descent. Right? So if you remove that, some 8 billion people and odd will be from other places which are indigenous, right? And there's a very, very, I was very surprised, delightfully surprised, that the idea of knowing, which is jnana, that we hold, is almost exactly the same that all indigenous people hold, which is it's an active thing. It's a verb, it's an active thing, and it is something held in a collective, it's something held in community, it's something held in a tradition. None of the indigenous communities consider something written and kept out there as knowledge. Okay, so in Sanskrit, there are clear words that separate out what is, just book knowing, which is called Panditya in the Yoga Sutras, and Jnana, which has a very important component to it, right? Jnana is something by knowing which we achieve three things. Yeah, the first thing is it helps us deal with mundane life and the living process, making a living, so on and so forth. So anything that is called jnana has to lead to this.
Mm.
Yeah. The second thing is it has to lead to an understanding of how to use my skills, my capabilities, my proclivities in a dharmic manner.
Mm.
That's the second aspect of knowledge. The third aspect is very critical. The third aspect is it must change the knower. So by knowing something, if I am not transformed in some way, it is not considered jnana. Okay, now this is very interesting because in a Western context, in science specifically, you don't bring the knower into the context of knowledge. So in this, bringing the knower into the context, I think for something like coaching and leadership is very, very essential. Yeah. Otherwise, what is happening is my relationship with anything I do becomes an objective. Na? Buber calls it I-it relationship, not an I-you or an I-thou. So if I have to do something which is dharmic, my relationship with the world has to have an I-thou uh, flavor to it, where I treat you as sacred, yeah, and I treat the world as sacred and so on. So jnana is that. So it is learning, it is knowing deeply enough to help you be dharmic, and also that whatever you know transforms you. So it's not an externally held skill. It's not a tool, right?
There's some.
It's a very important aspect of jnana.
There's several things you said, Raghu, that I just want to double tap on it, and so that our readers understand. First is that this 471 million United Nations definition uh, tries to explain what the world is in terms of indigenous, but whereas the point that came out is that except for America and Europe, which probably is about 550 million, the rest of the world is actually indigenous. If you take India, you take China, you take the Oriental. So and you're now making the point that actually the majority have been consigned to indigenous and relegated to anthropology, and the mainstay of the minority has been fructified to psychology of the manasic mind of me and the my society, and limited to just the outside vishesha level, as it were. Yeah, that's what one of the points you're making. And it's very interesting that today the workplace has also built with it narratives coming from the West and from academicians and from Second Post-World War, which dominates what are the psychology and the philosophy of the workplace, and completely ignoring the Oriental perspective, the feminine perspective, and so on. So one is there's clearly a world that's gone out of balance, and the majority view has not been represented because the majority itself is seen as the minority in this myopic view. So that's one. The second interesting thing, as you said in the webinar, everybody who's talking about this particular view is seeing the world in a present, continuously emerging, forming, taking a new shape. Nobody is seeing it like a statified, sterilized noun that
No, it's a
boxes.
dead thing. For all of them, Earth, everything is live all the time.
And the past is very much present the past is very much present in their present, in the way they describe I come from this mountain, I come from this river, I come from this kind of a background, in that sense. So they bring their past into their present, they use their present to launch themselves into the future. And somebody once said, that if you want to study what is the past, look at the present man. If you want to know what the future is going to be, look at the present man. In the here and now lies the past and lies the future. So So I just want to be doubly sure I understand when you are saying what are the implications of this kind of a dominant narrative that has replaced the reality of the world. What really does it mean in coaching terms?
See, I think it means a couple of things, Steve. Like what you said, now you brought in the feminine perspective and all that. It definitely allows you to look at both ecology and people as an it. The moment you look at them as an it, you can do whatever you want with it. You can exploit it, you can deal with it in any way you want. Yeah, that is one. The second is it gives predominance of importance to artifacts, like a book or something like that. So unless what you got is written down, yeah, it's not considered knowledge. You know, just this morning, there was a note from a person who's doing a PhD in something, some in-tech knowledge stuff. So he writes to me and says he wants to understand ABC. So where can he refer to it? So I'm telling him, look, this is not stuff that I've discovered in a book. This is the way I have been taught by my teacher.
Mm.
Yeah, that's not good enough for him. He insists that I must give him some textual reference. Now, this to me is meaningless because when I look at a textual reference, I'm taking the words of somebody, putting it my context and my associations and saying that I've understood something. Whereas this knowing as a verb and what the indigenous cultures are talking about, you cannot just put something in your mind from your words and call it knowledge. There is a constant interaction between you and me and the world, me and whatever I'm doing. And what comes up in that process is knowledge. This is very clear in the Taittiriya Upanishad. That Vidya is what comes between the teacher and the taught.
Yeah.
Between the Guru and the Shishya.
So let me unpack
It's a
this,
live
Raghu.
thing.
Let me unpack this for the readers because on one hand, you've got some body of known collective truth, which is agreed, but that is arrived at only between teacher and guru. When the teacher allows for the student to go into meditative introspection such that he himself can self-realize that truth, bring it back, engage with it several rounds, so that it becomes his own rather than something borrowed off the shelf. Is that what you're saying?
No, it's not just becomes his own. He changes in every process. So every iteration, I do some meditative, reflective stuff. Then I talk to my teacher. It's almost like a coaching relationship that they describe in the Upanishads.
Very nice.
Yeah, so there is a father and a son. There's Raghu and Varuni. So he asks, Raghu comes and asks some questions. Varuni says, this is what the ancients have said. Go and find out for yourself. Go and meditate. So the boy meditates, comes back and says, this is what I've discovered.
Has to go again.
So there obviously would be some dialogue there, right? Which helps me, let's say if I'm the person asking a question, to discover whether I've really found out something or not. And then I have to come up with a question. I have to say, hey, there is something further. So if I don't come up with a question, it ends there. So the question then generates the next process. The question generates the next process.
Very good.
So if something is written and kept in a book, where is the question?
Exactly. It's like once you know the three laws of equation, or then it just becomes, okay, I know Newton's laws of physics. What's so great about it? I know it. It loses its charm, it loses its entire significance.
Exactly. And only technologists do that. Now, Steve, it's very interesting. The scientists always know that knowledge is moving. Knowledge is a paradigm. Knowledge is going, you have to explore, otherwise you're not a scientist.
Mm.
So
Is
I'm
this
suggesting also
uh,
in this context that a coach ought to have this quality of a scientist.
of creating continuous deeper
Discovery,
realms of knowledge,
right?
not
Not take
the depths of insight
insight and
and
not take
self-realization.
even, not take somebody's tools and lagao it and
Absolutely. Is this the same thing as
so on and so forth.
often referred to as Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana?
Shravana. Shravana means listen. Yeah. Manana is the whole process that we discussed, na?
Mm.
Includes dialogue and so on. And
Mm.
once I've discovered, it's transformed me. So I will live by it. That is the Nididhyasitavya.
Mm. Mm. So then, if I were to just, for the sake of contrasting, look at much of the Western world, they seem to be having lens from outside, looking to other societies and having what is called the emic lens.
Mm.
That, like a Hofstede or a Trompener, this says this is what are the various kinds of societies and cultures, rather than actually going through this introspective, deeper deepening that comes from that insight. Is
Yeah.
that the key difference?
No, there are two responses I have to this, Steve.
Mm.
A Hofstede, for example, did his work in a particular context. IBM wanted to know how to control people across the world.
Mm. True.
So they conducted a study exactly like any Orientalist or an anthropologist
Mm.
and said, these people are like this, these people are like this, these people are like this.
Mm.
Right. And when you are holding a dominant position and you act in a certain way, people who don't have that dominant position will fall into whatever you're doing to them and adjust. So these theories become self-fulfilling prophecies. Like, they've talked about distance from authority.
Correct.
Now, in every Indian context, there are two contexts in which I deal with authority. Right? Every authority figure I know in an purely Indian context, in all Indian organizations, is available to me in a formal setting and in an informal setting. The way I can deal with him in an informal setting has a lot of freedom. I can argue, I can differ, so on and so forth. In a formal setting, I'm supposed to hold a certain respectful distance. Now, this comes from an old Indian practice, which we have forgotten, which I've revived with some friends of mine, and it works brilliantly in the rural and developmental context, which is called the kudam, where you bring people together. Most people who have any traditional contact with the tradition will know this. It's called a chaupal in the north, kutumba in Orissa, and so on, and very much prevalent in tribal communities, where if there's a very important question for the group, the elder will come and ask the question in a specific space, usually in the middle of the home. There'll be the space, or in a temple space, wherever. And then people dialogue. Everybody is equal. All members of society are represented. If it's a village level question, they dialogue, whatever it is, it's not something that finishes in a day. It goes on for several days, maybe weeks. People come back, yeah, discover a consensus, and then there's a formal announcement. So these formal situations hold a distance, whereas the informal does not. So where does this come in the study? It won't come.
Won't come.
Because in the IBM context, it's all formal, me and you, me and you. And Indians have already internalized the colonized mind. So when we go into an organization, I've had several discussions now where I talk to somebody about things, they say, no, 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 this I can do at home, this I can do, this is Indian. This cannot be brought into an official context and things like this.
Yeah. A very telling point, Raghu, because hierarchies, in a sense, explain power dynamics, whereas competencies and care and all is in a hedonistic society, and they're both different worlds. And And I get that. And this whole hedonistic versus the agonist, what was that guy who wrote it?
Agonist.
Chance, agonistic societies. Brilliant.
But the
So,
point is this, Steve. Point is not that these differences are there. The point is, if I, as a coach, take this off the shelf and say, Hofstede has said this, and you, Indian, are coming to me for coaching, and I don't have curiosity, which is the fundamental for Nyana. Set all this aside and really listen to you like a scientist discovering, and you and I are discovering. It's not that I'm discovering and telling you something. We
Very true.
establish this curiosity of discovery of what's happening to me.
Yeah.
In this context, then some insight, real insight will come up.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'll give me some tricks and tips, which I'll take, may work, may not work.
Yeah. And I think that in the work that we've done together, where we've opened up 4 spaces and quadrants and so on, we've dealt with all of those 4 quadrants as being within us, and the movement and the dynamic nature of all those various vectors, playing itself like a playbook within, rather than see ourselves as one or the other, which is a Y by X model where people automatically get, I'm a 5-5 manager, I'm a 9-9 manager, I'm a 1-9 manager, and then get fixated with those polarities. And if that's what we are giving as coaches to the client, there might be even a danger of projecting a point of view that is statified, stilified, and sterile.
Yeah.
Would you say?
Yeah. It becomes like a toolkit and a pill for an ill kind of a thing.
Okay, so I think we did the deep dive into Jnana. We're basically saying Jnana is like Vidya, it's an ever alive, present, continuous, rather than something which is on the shelf and then to be learned by rote or applied. Now we go to the next one, which is Ramya. And I was trying to look in the ICF competencies whether we have any close equivalent to Ramya in the ICF. And I couldn't find one. For example, in terms of Jnana, I found it facilitates clients' growth is a clear one. But I couldn't find something for Ramya. Maybe some of the readers can, inform us about this competency. What is Ramya, Raghu?
See, Ramya is fundamentally, it means a spiritual delight or an inward delight of some kind. That's what the word Ramya means. Yeah. And it is, it's there in all the arts and it's there in architecture. It's particularly defined in architecture. And maybe we can look at that and come back. Yeah. So what it means in architecture is there are 3 words. Okay. Bhogadya, which means utility, usefulness. Sukha darshanam, which means aesthetics, efficiency, and things like that. And the third word is Ramyam. Ramyam.
Joy.
This is a delight. So
Joy.
any design ought to have all 3. Now, if you go into Western discussions and the current architectural practice discussions, they'll only talk about the first 2.
Functionality and performance.
Is it functional or not? Is it aesthetic or not? And some people will say, why even aesthetics? Let's just keep it functional.
Keep it simple.
That's the whole discussion in Corbusier, who was brought in to create all this architecture in
Maybe
India.
Steve Jobs got too fun, right? The way he built his Apple and so on.
Yeah, he added the element of some element of delight. Yeah. But he had spent time here with
Correct.
Baba and so on.
Correct.
Yeah.
Is that something very close to Satyam Shivam Sundaram, or I'm completely off base?
No. That's a high this thing. Yeah. This is very simple. Yeah. Let's not get into high levels. Very simple. The Japanese use it all the time in their design. That's why their designs are so beautiful. Right? They talk about utility. They talk about aesthetics, a very high level of aesthetics, and the inner delight.
Mm.
You find really well-designed, really fantastic designs are all Japanese. I've not seen any other culture which designs with so much beauty. We had it and we've lost it. You know, if you go into all our old works, they all have Ramyam. Now, even mathematics in India was taught using poetry. Yeah. So that kind of an involvement with the flow of life, with an inner delight, I think is very, very important.
I'm just checking my understanding. So if you're in flow with the client, you don't feel tired, you don't feel stressed, you don't feel you're using technique, you're just flowing with him and the dancer, and both the dancers, just the dance remains, just instrument and musician depends, just the music remains. Is that what is Ramya then?
In that, there is an elevation. Now, that music, this will happen only if there is rhythm, proportion in the music. If, if you and I are singing a Jugalbandi, okay, let's compare this coach-coachy thing to a Jugalbandi. And you and I are not listening to each other and we're off tune. If what I'm doing, what you're doing is not adding to some purpose for which we have come together, there'll be a dissonance. There isn't an economy in the way the whole interaction is going on. Again, there will be dissonance. Nah? If I, as a coachee or a coach, keeps on talking without the being precise and concise, how does the conversation move?
I understood.
Now, Ramyam is something even more deep and beautiful. That in this process, the way we are paying attention to each other without any distraction and focused allows for another level to come up. That is not something I can aim for. The first two I can aim for.
I understood. So a child, let's say, suckling the mother's breast, unconditional positive regard, they say in English. Is it Ramya? I'm trying to find some.
No. Ramyam is when the child is playing and there is delight.
By both, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Ramyam is something beyond needs.
Okay.
Need comes in Bhogadyam and Sukadarshanam. Ramyam is beyond that.
We'll move to the next. Do you have any other example on Ramyam? That
No, I think it's important. Anybody who's familiar with music will understand this easily. Music or art will understand this easily. And I guess, in my mind, any dealing with another human being is an art.
Absolutely. I'm taking one word out of this as the quality of evocativeness.
Evocation, absolutely. How evoked does a person feel?
And
in the process.
In the process, and one feels warm and good and really substantive. I think I'm taking that as what Ramya
See, there's
means.
another way of looking at it also, Steve. There are some interactions which leave me and you feeling elevated. There's another energy level. There are some interactions that make you
feel depressed, yeah.
Suck energy out. A Ramyam kind of an interaction will always leave me feeling energy in a very deep way, not in the normal, ha ha ho ho way.
Yeah, that's
deep
beautiful.
Sense of energizing and elevation.
Beautiful. So we leave it here, but I just wanted to say something from my experience that every time I've been in flow, I could work even 8 hours at just flow. But when I've been using techniques, I've been deliberate, I've been trying to find some outcomes, I've seen resistance build up within myself.
Of course.
So obviously I'm not doing it in Ramyam, I'm doing it in for outcome and
You're doing it in Ram.
I'm acting on.
Yeah, you're acting on yourself, everything else.
And I can see this in labs because every time we are in flow, we could spend the whole day in labs.
Exactly.
But when you're into a session, it doesn't come to an end. You're wondering what happened. Then you know you're just applying technique, and it sort of alerts you. So I think the body alerts you whether you're in Ramyam or whether you feel dispirited, low. Your body will tell you, for example. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's move to the next one. Your favorite, yoga. First of all, just tell the audience what is yoga and the way you hold Antaranga yoga and the other kinds of yoga that you get so upset about.
Sure. Now, yoga fundamentally means to be in flow, to be integrated, and so on. You know, the Bhagavad Gita has many definitions of yoga. And in our context, I think the definition that will make sense is there is a statement that says yoga karmasu kaushala. That in the actions that you do, is there a sense of flow? Is there a sense of competence? Is there a proficiency that you bring in, and all of this coming together? Yeah. So it's really a feeling of deep integration in me of all my energies, my capabilities, my senses, and everything. Yeah. Now, if I have to bring that, okay, now the acme of that would be what is called dhyana. Now, most people think dhyana is sitting somewhere for 3 hours and gazing at your navel. It is not. Those are practices that enable you to pay deep, abiding attention in the here and now without any distraction whatsoever. That is dhyana. Right? So when a musician is singing, that musician can very easily be in dhyana if they're really bringing all of themselves, all their capabilities and everything. It is called being sakala. Sakala means all of my abilities and capabilities and so on. And all of them are in harmony and in convergence. Right? Then there is not only power, not the power, but there's a certain emergence of Shakti. There's an integration of all my energies, and there is a Shakti that comes up. It's a very integrated, graceful, synchronized self that emerges. Beautiful. That is yoga.
Beautiful. Right? And Raghu, does that mean, because we've been taught this also in ICF, which is that you be where the client is. Don't be above him. Don't push him somewhere else.
No, these are all effects of Steve. See, when I'm in the state of integration in me, there are a couple of consequences of it. One consequence of it is my interaction with anybody at that point will be in what in yogic terms is called ahimsa, which means there is no violence, neither to me nor to you, nothing. The boundaries meet perfectly, and they will also part perfectly. Yeah, so whatever rasas you are feeling, I will be able to experience and resonate with it without bringing anything in the middle. That will happen only if I'm in dhyana with you. Beautiful. So all the stuff that you do, like for example, you just said, "Now my body will feel stiff if I'm not in Ramya." You'll be able to recognize that your body is feeling stiff or that your breathing is not harmonious only if you've done yogic practice. Otherwise, we become so insensitive to our body toxicities, to our body tensions, and so on, that we don't even recognize whether we are in flow or not. So most of what people know as yoga, which is asana and pranayama, is just a preparatory thing. That is not yoga at all. In fact, Krishnamacharya would very clearly say, if you're not really paying attention to whatever you're doing, whether it's breathing or posture, it is not yoga. It's just a postural practice or a breathing practice. Just doing box breathing or some stuff as it is called now is not yoga, unless you bring a certain quality of attention to it. Then what happens is I become more and more sensitive to what is happening to myself. And when the body is quiet, it becomes possible to pay attention without distraction. All my energies are available to me.
Fabulous.
Right. The second critical practice, which most people miss out, which is the inner, what you're speaking about is antarangana, the inner thing, is to be able to see where my energies and my prana has got boxed in and tied up in knots. So this is called a granthi. So if I'm tied up in knots, people use these terms, na? I feel knotted up and this and that. I don't think it's an accidental statement. So these have to be loosened out. That can be done only if I really understand my emotional states and I'm able to gather all of these energies back together. Then I can bring it to attention. So that's why those 8 angas, 8 spiraling kind of practices. So every time I do asana, I can do better pranayama. I'm more relaxed. I'll be more open. There'll be no toxicities left. I won't be getting unnecessarily triggered. Yeah. So my interfaces will be cleaner. My inner state will be cleaner. I'll be in more, not only compassionate, but content inside me. Right. And then I can be emotionally balanced. I'm emotionally balanced. I can bring that to focus wherever I want.
Yeah, let's just clarify this one step further. When you say emotional, not get triggered, what you're basically saying is that there are rasas and there are rasas. And those rasas come up in your conversation with the client. And if you're not in this yogic balance, you're going to be triggered, you're going to react, you're going to be able to, you'll be tossed around like the client is being tossed around. So to be in that yogic state is to be in a state of shantam, from which you see, work with, be compassionate to the rasas, but also allow the rasas to flow back in and rest.
Yeah. Yeah. So which means if you're anxious, I have to be able to resonate with your anxiety without getting disturbed in my center. If I block it, most people do that. If you're speaking about something that I feel scared of, that I don't want to look at, or something like that, I will block it. And if I'm not sensitive to myself, I won't even know that I've blocked it.
Fabulous. So let's just take this point and clarify it once and for all, which is that if a coach is saying, my gosh, that was a difficult session, I felt so moved, I got in touch with my own terror, or I got immobilized, those perhaps might indicate that the coach is not in a yogic state, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't actually say that he's compassionate and has high sympathy and high empathy. It doesn't say that at all, because you've actually got shaken and stirred. And that's not the way.
And you couldn't bond, no? Because you got shaken and stirred, you couldn't bond with your coach or a coachee.
And we actually started in the first session by saying that one of the reasons why we are doing yogic coaching conversations is that you are what you are with yourself. And then only with being able to go deeper do you have a chance to be where the client is. And you can only be with the client to the extent you can take the lift to a certain level. If you can't take the lift below.
No, Steve, I don't like a part of this formulation.
Okay.
So me going to where the client is very patronizing.
Okay.
If I stay with the yogic frame, yeah, me and the client enter a common shared space where there is resonance between us. There is neither me going to his level nor his coming to my level, nothing. There is none of this level business. I'm not this superior being sitting here and giving you some gyan or whatever, helping you or whatever. Yeah, the only thing I can do in the yogic context is if I can be in a state of shantam, while I listen to you go through whatever it is that you're going through. Yeah, whether it's deep fears, desires, this, that, whatever the confusion you're dealing with. What happens in that process, once this common space is created, is you will also start experiencing that quiet space from which you can look at yourself.
Beautiful.
Now, when you can do that, you will have insights. Because nobody knows the situation the way you do, na?
Beautiful.
I will never know your situation. All that I can do is to help you release energies from inside you, release your own intelligence from wherever it is stuck, so that you can find the quiet space from which you can look at your context and your issues with a lot of clarity.
Beautiful.
And you will get your own solutions. There is no coming down to your level.
Beautiful. One of the notions, rightly or wrongly, is that a coach believes, rightly or wrongly, that it is her responsibility to steer, to nudge, to guide, to point the way, to show the light, to make that which is hidden uncovered, to remove the cover. What do you have to say to respond to these notions?
No, I wouldn't agree with any of that. Yeah, as a yogic coach, Vitaraga Vishayam it is called, na? Like this thing. My only responsibility is to listen to you with absolute stillness and quietness and from Shantam. When I do that, you and I move into another space. You and I don't become two separate people. We move into another space. This resonant thing that happens between us I'm talking about is a different space. It doesn't exist with you. It doesn't exist with me. It is created in the contact.
So would you then...
When you'll experience Ramyam, you'll experience all that. When that resonant space gets created, there'll be trust. There'll be proper action. There'll be dharmic flow. Whatever knowledge there is will come to bear. Yeah, so it's a jointly created space. And because it is space, it allows for something beyond your concerns and my concerns and your conditioning and my conditioning. It allows some other intelligence and some other processes to come and enlighten us.
So just to clarify, there are some CBTs, RBTs, many Ts that seek to modify the actionability of the behavior, hoping that if the behavior gets modified, like I wear a tie to work every day, my attitude towards tie wearing will change, and over a period of time, my thinking and feeling will modify, adapt to suit the behavior modification. And that's one school of thought.
The key word there is behavior modification. Of course, that will happen. I'll start getting conditioned to that. Right. Now, some of these things might be useful. Now, if you're reframing or something, whatever terms you use, they're all useful. See, in yoga, you have to remember this. There are 4 levels. One is called shamanam. If you're coming to me all, head up with a problem and things like that, I have to deal with that. I have to be compassionate and give you some solutions or something like that to help you with the immediate symptomatic help.
Like a tablet for a headache.
Like a tablet. Okay, wear a tie to work, don't go with t-shirt, your boss is going to shout at you, and you're going to end up feeling like Zelensky. Yeah, this is a very superficial, shamanam. Then there is shodhanam. Shodhanam is when you start asking the question and doing what I'm doing, what am I really doing? How can I shift something inside so that I don't create these
recurring patterns,
problematic patterns? What are the patterns? Right? And then there is something called arogyam. This yoga that we're talking about now is at the arogyam level, at one level for the coach, which is a very deep, quiet, very integrated energy space. Yeah, which is why I can listen to you, whatever you're talking about, and not while I resonate with you, I don't get dislocated.
I don't get dislocated.
Yeah, I've been in facilitation coaching context where people have talked about gang rape and things, man. Now, if I have to help that person to get in touch and look at themselves in a way that, at least for a while, is a healing touch, while I resonate with their pain and their anguish and their rage, yeah, I cannot let go of my center.
Fabulous. It's like seeing the picture, but not immersing yourself into their picture.
No, it's not just seeing a picture. It is resonating. I am
With
vibrating
whatever.
with them,
Yeah.
right? It's not seeing. I'm not distancing. But there is some space available in me beyond all of this.
Beautiful. Okay, with that, we're going to go to the last one, which sometimes you are right now calling it Abhyasa. Earlier, you called it sadhana. So can you help clarify the
Yeah,
choice you
Abhyasa
use?
is simply practice, man.
Ah,
It's practicing all of this and going in a spiral. You do something, you learn, you make mistakes, you do the right thing, and you learn, you keep moving round and round and round and round. That's it.
so it's actually a sadhana of practices, right? Yeah, and so for a coach, what are the practices?
Whatever we discussed so far, Maitri, Karma, Dharma, Nyana, Ramya, and Yoga.
Very good.
In a context, it's not an isolation. Abhyasa is in a context.
So we
Sadhana is in a context.
hmm, hmm. Brilliant. So we've come to the the end, and I think for me, one of the things that you bring out very clearly, Raghu, is that there's a whole shift of moving away from the doing to focus on the being of the individual and getting away from action, but looking at the nature of the being and the unfolding into the becoming. So it's really the axiology of the being,
The
rather than the
action,
epistemology or the ontology of.
correct. And that itself will bring about, like you said, the unfolding. The unfolding is the action. It's not as though there's no action. There is action. At the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna goes and fights.
Mm,
There is
mm,
action, but the action is coming from somewhere else.
mm. There is a few coaches who ask that we should be practical and pragmatic and say we should do hybrid coaching because the marketplace is very competitive, and sometimes you have to give a little what the coachee wants, so a little bit of consulting, a little bit of mentoring, a little bit of counseling. उसको mix करके give a khichdi full of so what do you think about that
Yeah,
kind of.
the yogic thing, no, the yogic thing, the only question is, am I being appropriate to you or not? Yeah, I've had situations in which somebody comes, right? He is very strongly from a good son identity. He ends up asking me again and again what to do, what to do, what to do. If I send him off saying, no, 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 you should figure it out.
You're a useless coach.
No, the issue is not I'm a useless coach. Issue is I'm being dysfunctional. Here is a person who needs that help. So why should I not give that help? What is this thing I'm sticking out to, yeah? Some standard that this is what coaching is and I have to do that, while the poor guy in front of me is
Beautiful.
actually struggling. So maybe once he comes out of that, then I can take him into deeper states and I can take him into something else. So I don't look at it as hybrid, not hybrid. These are all labels from the outside, Steve.
Yeah.
And to me, it makes no sense.
No, beautiful. And I think let me just sort of clarify it for the listener. There are times when you join the person in his battlefield. At times you stand by him as a Maitri. At times, you take him and give him some tips because he needs it and you are a bit more senior. But at some time, the real time, you take him to that place, which is the place of the seeker, which allows for new sprouting.
No, that is if he wants to.
Okay.
He may not want to.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. He may not want to be that. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. It's now 8:20. We've got just about 10 minutes left, and we've
Yeah, we promised
must
him
invite.
more
Yeah, we
time.
promise
You and I
everyone.
got caught with our
Yeah,
discussion.
yeah.
Let's have an open house if it's
That's
possible. Yeah.
can you get everybody onto the screen? Can we see them all on postage size videos if we can? It'll
Hi,
be good
Steve.
to.
We can ask
Hi.
if anyone has any questions to ask. They can raise their hand. I'll promote them as panelists.
Oh, lovely. And then we can
Lovely.
see them, right, Dens?
Yes, absolutely.
Very good. Okay.
Please raise your hand, participants. I'll promote you to panelist, and you can speak to Raghu and Steve. Anyone has any questions? Please raise your hand.
Usually it's the first question that becomes uncomfortable other than just flows. So who's going to be courageous with the first question? There is one by Sandeep Kalra. Sandeep, will you just verbalize it, please? Come on the screen and verbalize it. Then can you have Sandeep Kalra join? And Rajan, if you want to come in, you can come in too because you wanted some elaboration.
Yeah. But Sandeep is one small post-it inside this post-it. Yeah.
Sandeep,
Is it?
Sandeep, you may please start talking.
Actually, I've got a very bad throat. My voice will not be able to reach it. That's why.
Oh, I think Sandeep is having some issues with his throat. So,
Yeah. So, what I wanted to say when we are referring to Ramya state, and we were discussing as to is there any core competency which it can be related to. So I was slightly curious, could it be the competency number 2 when we talk in terms of you using your own intuition?
Okay, I'll try and respond to all of them, Sandeep, and then Raghu can pitch in. The Maitreya is clearly the ICF building trust and safety, the ICF competency of embody the coaching mindset and cultivates trust and safety is part of this piece, which you alluded to. Karma is about maintaining presence and listens actively. Dharma is about evokes awareness and cultivates learning. Jnana is facilitates clients' growth, and Abhyasa has developed oneself as a coach through continuous practice. We struggled to find creativity, Ramya, in the ICF coaching as we know it today. Yes, Raghu.
I don't know these things that well, Steve. I'll go
Uh,
along with you.
uh,
And if Sandeep has something to add, maybe it'll be interesting to listen to his perspective and see. Yeah. So this thing about intuition, your own intuition, raising the intuitiveness of the client.
Maybe I'll write to you subsequently because I'm not in a state to be able to
speak. Yeah, I understand.
I'll write to you. I'll write to you.
No problem. You can keep writing as we bring in Subramaniam Iyer, who says the coaches needs ownership to move on. How do we create it as a coach? Should coaches do it all? Needs
at all.
ownership to move on. Yeah, needs ownership to move on.
If Subramaniam comes in, we can have a chat. Yeah. What does this mean?
How do you create ownership?
Ownership in whom? In what?
In the coachee to take steps to develop himself. It's like this usual.
It is said that ultimately at the end of it all, the coachee needs to have a sense of ownership so that probably the action that he needs to take will fructify. So now you were saying that, I understood you were saying, Raghu, that ultimately it is up to the coachee. Our job is to only probably inspire him to that level and leave it. So I
One
my
can do.
yeah.
That's
So
all
my
one can do.
clarifications are around: is it the work of the coach at all, or the coach ends inspiring him and then he takes it forward?
See, in my understanding, it's like this, na? Every person who's come to me for coaching has, let's call it ownership, to a certain kind of self and a certain kind of problem that he will act upon, and he will expect you to respond to that. So
Yeah.
if he doesn't have this at all, which sometimes happens when the boss says this guy has to go for coaching, the person who comes in without any commitment to the process. Okay, now that's not very common in my experience. So one of the things I do right in the initial first discussion is to ask the person, why are you here? Yeah, and so that person has to articulate quite clearly from themselves why they are there. Right? And then it becomes possible to move from there. Now, this might change as a person gets more insight, they might go further. But I don't see, in the yogic context, it's very clear, yeah. If you don't have a question, I don't thrust an answer onto you. You have to own the question. And you'll only learn to the extent that you own the question. I found this in practice all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. I think it's extremely beautiful, owning the question. Oh, and that opens up a lot of possibility. Yeah. Am I serious about that question? Am I really, do I really want to? Wonderful, Raghu. Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah. Great. Thank you.
One of the things that we often ask ourselves is that, do we motivate people in organizations? And I think that word again has come from a Western context of somebody like the leader motivating. In the Eastern world, it's really inspiring, creating a learning mindset, is creating that iksha, the desire to learn. And when one doesn't say the student is motivated, the student has that learning iksha to search. And so we have to really look at who then is taking responsibility. Does it lie with the manager, or does it lie with the seeker itself? Okay, there's Rajan. Did you have a question, or Mahesh? Can you promote them up to?
Rajan is here.
I
Rajan?
just wanted to say that we have had our own traditions. Not only we, but for example, even in Japanese, they have a sensei concept and other things. So if we are able to develop a holistic uh, Indian coaching model, in fact, coaching itself is a word itself has gone so many iterations even in the Western world. And if there could be an equivalent word and a model, perhaps that could be more effective in our context.
We have the SaptaSwara model.
Exactly, that's what we're offering you.
Yes, that is why I said it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Perhaps it has to be more, I mean,
No, we need the help of people like you, Rajan, to tell that there is something here and there is something Indic and whatever.
Yeah. In
And
fact,
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
In fact, we formed that Asia Coaching Network as
Yeah.
a separate organization
Yeah.
with the sole objective of developing an Indian oblique Asian model and also develop these concepts in Indic languages or Asian languages, because language itself plays a very critical part. For example, if we are talking to a in the real coaching situation, very often we have to go to the subconscious. Whereas the entire languaging, if it is in English, it is difficult to get into subconscious, because
Wow.
normally we think in local language and then we translate. So perhaps if we could develop these models more, clarifying and developing a total model and start practicing in vernacular, so-called vernacular languages. So there could be a huge market and we could be able to reach more number of people in helping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's the good
Our
news.
dream too. Yeah.
So here's the good news. The model exists. The exercises, the practice, the methodology, the pedagogy exists. They have been already beta tested. We need not to change the whole world, but to change a few to begin with.
Yeah.
And we're looking for a few people who will join in deepening their coaching competencies. If I look at X axis as being the ICF competency, the yogic coaching is the Y axis, sitting, complementing the X axis with a third gift, which is the Z axis of the Arjuna awakening. When one is able to look at what is happening in both the axes and ask the fundamental question in this context, what is happening, what is enough, what is not, what requires to be worked with. And there's the deeper level that comes from that engagement with the client systems.
Julia is asking an interesting question. How should a yogic coach advertise and market?
Julia, come on to the thing. Yeah, should they go advertise
No
and
idea.
market
No
their coaching?
idea, Julia. If you have any ideas, please tell us. I'm terrible at this.
I know. Thank you. I don't know. I get knotted up when I think about who I'm attracted to are those that I seek intuitively, right? And when I go online to like look for models or different ways to market, there's so much slick, do this, 10 things for this, 5 things for that, download my free PDF. I want to be more sincere and humble, and I also need to earn a living.
Yeah, luckily, Julia, I don't.
Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah, I just turned 75 and I've done my bit.
I think we, working with Raghu, are trying to look at this whole question of marketing, which is how to make the phone ring, which continues to elude us. But I think when the phone rings, when it does, we do know how to sell. So I just
Got it. Yes.
yeah. So I think the real issue is about getting the phone to ring.
Yeah. So let's have a class on that.
Well, let's do that. Let's have a dialogue and see what happens.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, we are at 8:34. Are there any other questions?
Steve, we have one last question from
Yeah, go for it.
Mahesh.
Yeah, thank you, Steve and Raghu, for the wonderful exchange. My question was on the state of mind. You mentioned about coach and coachee sharing a common space in yogic coaching. So even Subramanian said that you get into a subconscious level. So is it mind is in a subconscious level or conscious level? But because I believe being conscious is the biggest challenge in the process of coaching or in the process of self-awareness.
See, Mahesh, the problem is in words like conscious and consciousness and all that, huh? Because in the yogic frame, these words don't make much sense.
Okay.
You have to go into a lot of theory for that. None of the stuff that we call the mind is conscious, actually, in the theory. There is something else called Purusha, which is conscious. And all that the mind is doing is reflecting to the Purusha. The mind as a reflector is not conscious, but it is aware. There are some other ways of looking at it. Right? So this conscious, unconscious is not something that the yogic space admits of. But it does say that my entire perceptual process can be conditioned and covered and distorted. So that is what has to be looked at.
Yeah.
So all that we are saying is, if I, as the coach, has as clean a mirror as possible, that's the whole Abhyasa thing. Am I continuously polishing the mirror? Then what happens? One, it's possible for you when you're speaking to me to have an exchange where you can see yourself more clearly.
Right.
Second, because I'm coming from a relatively or hopefully still space, it awakens something else in you, which is much deeper, which is more powerful, which is more intuitive.
I just want to add to this. There is this whole bit about this guy who said, I think, therefore I am. And he's referring to the Manas mind, which is that which has executive functions, which has all the senses of the touch, feel, nose, breath. And that's the mind, which is the executive function. But we do also realize that there are other minds, the eye maker, the Mahat, and all of that. And therefore, when the one part of the world talks about consciousness, they're referring to a physiological awareness of oneself and the qualia that's taking place at that point of time. So they're actually one word, but the languaging and the implications are quite distanced when we look at the Indic world of consciousness versus the Western world of consciousness.
Yeah. Okay.
The
Thank you.
Indian ways of looking at things might be much closer to the yogic.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you so
I'd
much.
like for each one of you to just drop in one word, one phrase in the chat box so we get some feedback of how this 1 hour has been. It's also this is the time when we say bye to you. We've closed out the 3 series. If you wish to continue this journey with us, Ritambara is the place to go to. There are several programs besides yogic coaching. There is the Mahabharata immersion and several more. There's the difficulty of being dharmic and many others that you'll see on the thing. Our tribe at Ritambara is growing in consciousness and collectively in what we aspire to do. We'd love for all of you to be part of that tribe. And with that, namaste.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Raghu and Steve. Maybe we're not saying a goodbye. We'll end the session with maybe until next time.
Yes.
Yes?
Alvida.
Absolutely.
Alvida.
Thank you so much, Raghu and Steve. See you next time. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.